Greetings, friends, fellow patriots, and fellow citizens, and welcome to this week's edition of the We the People Convention News and Opinion Podcast. My name is Tom Zawistowski, and I'm the host of this podcast. I'm also the president of the We the People Convention organization. And this podcast is brought to you by the generous donations of those who've been giving to the We the People Convention for the 16 years of our existence and help pay for this podcast, but also our wonderful website, our emails, our text messages, our social media, and our donations to other conservative groups throughout the nation. Welcome to all of you. Thank you to our donors for supporting us. Thank you for all of you who are joining us. You can see I'm wearing my a rather festive shirt, which I'm not prone to wear shirts like this, but my wife Nan loves it. And it's August 1st. It's the heart of summer now, and it's just hard to believe that we are, already, halfway through this historic year of 2025. We have so much to cover because so much is happening. And I just appreciate all of you who join us to get a recap of what happened this week, what's important to you from the standpoint of protecting and defending our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity, and basically trying to make sense of it all. So we're going to try to do this in this podcast, but boy, it's just going to be tough. And I'm going to explain it to you with this first story, because I want to set the tone for this podcast with a story that came out this week from the Pew Charitable Trust, or the Pew polling people, Pew Research Center, I guess is the right way to say it. On your screen, if you're watching, and I'll describe it to those of you who are listening, there's a graphic that came out that says most Americans say Republicans and Democrat voters cannot agree on basic facts. 8 in 10 U.S. adults say that when it comes to important issues facing the country, Republicans and Democratic voters not only disagree on plans and policies, but also cannot agree on basic facts. Another 18% say voters in opposing parties can agree on basic facts, even if they disagree about policies. So only 18% think we can agree on whether boys can be girls. Okay, basic facts. Views are essentially unchanged since we first asked a similar question in 2016. That year, 81% said that most Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton supporters could not agree on basic facts. One thing Republicans and Democrats can largely agree on, however, is their disagreement. 83% of Democrats and independents who lean Democratic now say voters from the two political parties disagree on the basic facts, as do 79% of Republicans. So we agree that we disagree. But then the next thing comes in that I think is even more important. These views exist amid wide divides between Trump and Kamala Harris voters over many, but not all topics, including cultural issues, the role of government. Republicans and Democrats more broadly also often turn to different sources of news and information. The survey asked all respondents who say Democrats and Republican voters cannot agree on basic facts whether the two potential factors are the reason why. First, among this group, 67% say a major reason that partisan voters are interpreting the same information differently. Number two, 53% say a major reason is that Republican and Democratic voters are getting different information altogether. These two answers are not mutually exclusive. In fact, 40% of those who received this question said both of them are true, that we're getting different information, and then even if you get it, you're interpreting it differently, right? So let me give you a fundamental example. It is clear as a bell now that the Democratic socialists, who are basically communists, want what? Big government. They're going crazy because we cut an infinitesimal 0.1% of the budget with the $9 billion recursion that got rid of National Public Radio, because to them, government is the answer. To you and I, on the conservative side, who believe in individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity, government's the problem. We want less government. They want more government. So that's what is a perfect example of we can't agree on basic things like, oh yeah, the Constitution limits government. That's why they want to throw out the Constitution. But that's why they're not Americans. And I can say that, but that doesn't help the problem. But the other part is that even given the same information, you come to completely different decisions. I'm going to cover the Cincinnati disaster where, the race riot basically broke out, where a black mob beat up white people. And to those of us who believe that all men are created equal and that racism is racism, it's not just, you can only be racist against blacks, you can be racist against whites. We go, this is a hate crime. There's evidence that on one of the cell phones, the guy was basically egging them on because they're white. And the one city council member, and I'll cover this more later in the second half. But my point is, the other side says, oh no, this is justified. And it's even some of the public officials in Cincinnati say, oh yeah, black people should beat up white people because they're racist. Whoa. Okay, whoa. So how do you have a nation? How can we exist together as a nation when we can't even agree on basic facts? Like taxes are bad. We believe that. We don't believe that you should have property taxes. But if you believe in big government, you're like, oh yeah, you don't deserve to have that big house. We can take all the money you've got if it's for the public good, right? So this is the challenge you and I face. And I talked to you last week about winning the narrative. In other words, we're not getting the information out. And I'm going to give you a perfect example of that coming up next. But if we don't fight for what the truth is, and you must be committed to the truth. I tell you this all the time. You cannot lie to yourself. You cannot lie to your spouse. You cannot lie to your family. You cannot lie to your employees, your fellow church members, your friends, anyone. Lying is not only a sin, okay, but it's destructive. So you got to tell the truth. And if we are not committed to the truth, and if we're, the Chinese communists spread into our culture, you can have your own truth. Truth is relative. There is no real truth. If you believe that, then there's no real society. There's only chaos. You and I are trying to bring clarity to the chaos. We're trying to bring order. We're trying to explain things so that anyone can understand it and try to reach agreement. That's what this podcast is about. But now you can see the challenge, because heck, I used to say this about the Tea Party. One of the great benefits, I will call it, of being in the Tea Party and being a leader in the Tea Party is we argued about everything. I can say to you that today is August 2nd, which according to our current calendar it is, and I would get people say, well, what calendar are you using, right? Because throughout history, there's been different calendars. You can argue about everything, but you need to agree about some key things. You have to agree today is Saturday, August 2nd, when I'm recording this show. And if you can't agree to that, you can't have a society. And that's what we're on the brink of not having the society. And you and I need to fight to preserve society so that benefits us and helps us have our own individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. Okay? I'm not talking about groupthink. I'm not talking about you can't argue. I'm not saying, everybody has to agree on everything, but you have to agree on certain things. And some of those things are that it is better to be in a country where you as an individual are responsible for how your life goes and not somebody outside of you. That's a basic thing that we have to agree on. If you don't agree with that, you shouldn't be, you should be watching this podcast because maybe I'll be able to convince you, okay? But that's why we're committed to individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity, because it has been proven by the founding of this nation to bring the greatest happiness to life. That's why everyone wants to come here. That's why people break into our country and they don't break into other countries. All right. So let's explore that concept. Okay. I put that at the beginning because I'll be referencing it as we go along, because there's big things happening and things you and I have wanted for a long time. It started this week where, after last week, Tulsi Gabbard released these documents that clearly show that Barack Obama, his administration, the FBI, the DOJ, the Hillary Clinton's campaign conspired to rig the 2016 election, and then after it was lost, to destroy Donald Trump's, first term. Now, we hadn't gotten to how they stole the 2020 election. That's to come. And how they used January 6th to create a Fedsurrection to try to destroy people like you and me, and then go all the way into 2024 with what they did, with Donald Trump using lawfare to destroy him, and they tried to kill him. That's the thread we're pulling on, but we ain't there yet. So we had Tulsi Gabbard put this out, and then we get this little story. FBI Director Kash Patel has turned over the documents to Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley after he found thousands of sensitive Trump-Russia probe documents inside burn bags in a secret room at the FBI. Whoa, okay? This is information that had not been before disclosed. FBI Director Kash Patel found a trove of sensitive documents in multiple burn bags. Sources told Fox News Digital that the burn bag system is used to destroy documents designated as classified or higher that they don't think they need anymore. Then what happened was the declassification of the classified Annex, which is being called, these are from the Durham investigation, and it was called the Durham Annex. I don't know why they do that. It's being done in close coordination between CIA Director John Ratcliffe, FBI Director Kash Patel, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, and Attorney General Pam Bondi, and Acting Security Agency Director William Hartman. The declassified index was transmitted to Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley, who then released them to the public this week in a bombshell report. Okay? So what did these documents show? Well, first of all, they showed proof that Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and the U.S. intelligence agencies worked together and with George Soros to undermine the Trump, the election, and then the Trump first presidency. In a bombshell development that should rattle every American, newly declassified documents confirm what conservatives have said all along. The Trump-Russia collusion narrative wasn't just baseless. It was a deliberate political hit job that at the highest levels of the Obama administration orchestrated, with Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign at the helm and the FBI eagerly playing along. But it gets worse. Buried in classified annex to John Durham's report, which is finally seeing the light of day after the Biden administration kept it under wraps, are explosive allegations that the FBI may have been doing George Soros's bidding during Operation Crossfire Hurricane. This intel, which Durham acquired and shared with a Senate committee, was reportedly so sensitive that whistleblowers say it never saw daylight until now. The hoax wasn't just a smear campaign, it was a weaponized operation, and the American people were targets. Now I'm going to play you a little summary clip by Jonathan Turley, but before I do, I want to make one thing clear, and I want you to change your messaging, because this idea about it being a hoax is a mistake on our part to call it that. Now, there's a guy, for those of you who follow me on X, Tom Z, WTPC on X.com, there's this guy named Catturd, C-A-T-T-U-R-D, who's actually one of the biggest influencers on X. And I've written back and forth with him at times, and he put something out, and I said, Catturd, we need to stop calling it a hoax. The word diminishes the seriousness of the criminal activity that undermined 3 presidential elections and overthrew a sitting U.S. president. It's not a hoax or a dirty political trick. It's a coup against the American people and the president they elected 3 times. Please help us get people to stop using that word. It's not a hoax. It's a coup. It's criminal. Do not use the word hoax, which they just used in this, Fox News story. So let me play this video for you that Jonathan Turley kind of recaps how serious this is. Because, folks, it ain't no hoax and it ain't no dirty political trick.
Well, there's a lot of people worried in the city tonight. This is the great reveal that John Ratcliffe was promising, and there's more to come. The important thing about this, Sean, is that it confirms things that we knew, and it gives us things that we did not know. We always knew, not always, but we knew earlier in July 2016, Brennan briefed Obama to say that Hillary Clinton was planning to create a Russian collusion scandal for Trump to distract from her email scandal. He briefed the president on that, and then months later, he played a critical role in overruling CIA analysts and including the Steele dossier. We also know that the Clinton campaign lied to the media, denied they had funded the Steele dossier, and indeed hid that funding as legal expenses by Mark Elias, the general counsel at that time of the Clinton campaign. And all of this required this all-on-deck effort, the government, the campaign, the media. That's why when you see the reaction of the media today, it's clear that no matter what is produced, you can show a dozen heads in a duffel bag, and they're still not impressed. And the reason is that for most of the media, this is not coverage. It would be a confession. That is, if they actually cover this story, they are confessing their own role in what may be the greatest political hit job in history.
Again, the greatest political hit job in history? No, the greatest crime against the people, against the Constitution in the history of the country. This isn't a political hit job. This is sedition. This is a coup, right? And he says that the American people or the media can't cover it because it would be an admission of their guilt. And they are guilty. And I want to raise the issue with all of you that, listen, we have the First Amendment to protect the media. But when is the media not media? How about when the media, quote unquote, how about when corporations, CBS, NBC, ABC, New York Times, Washington Post, are used by inside intelligence operatives to push an agenda to overthrow the sitting president, to get that president impeached on bogus charges? Is that media? Is that First Amendment protected speech? I don't think so. I think whatever investigation, and we said last week that Pam Bondi has, launched a special, committee or group to investigate this, needs to start saying that these aren't media. These are political actors. But let me get back to the main point that involves you and I. You need to send that video I just played to everyone you know. You need to post it on your social media. You need to, it'll be on our podcast page. You'll be able to, click on that and get a link and send it to everyone. You need to send, the story, that we posted. You need to send this story, proof Clinton and Obama and U.S. intelligence worked with Soros to undermine Trump, to everyone you know. Because we have to win the narrative. And again, this Pew Learning Center, Research Center, said that even if you give them that information, they're going to say it's not true. That doesn't mean you still don't give it to them. You've got to try to fight to bring them around. At some point, you can't deny it. Again, 2 weeks ago, I did the story. 60% of Democrats believe to this day that Trump and Russia worked together to steal, quote unquote, to hack the 2016 election, despite $43 million of the investigation, impeachment of Trump. Found no evidence. There's no evidence. And these documents that are now anyone can read show unequivocally that's absolutely false and was done on purpose to overthrow a sitting president. Your job is to share that. Why? Because the media will not share it. Here's something from X. CBS, ABC, and NBC News spent 2,300 minutes on Trump-Russia in the years 2016 and 2017. 2,300 minutes. Fast forward to now. The same three networks have spent under 3 minutes discussing Obama-Russia. The media doesn't even hide it, right? Why? Because they can't admit that they did it because the people who still believe them have not been exposed to their lies. Your job is to expose them to those lies, right? By sharing things that we give you in this podcast. So this is not just information. You're not here watching just to get informed. That's important because you got to be informed to make good decisions. But you're also here to act, to take action, to help preserve our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity in this nation. Okay? So let's move on to what else has been going on that's really, really big, but keeps getting distorted. All right? This was massive. Trump gets massive trade deal with the European Union. President Trump announced a sweeping trade agreement with the European Union on Sunday, setting a baseline 15% tariff on European imports, including automobiles, while keeping existing 50% duties on steel and aluminum in place. As part of the deal, the EU committed to purchasing $750 billion in U.S. energy products. Wow. $750 billion. Trump announced the agreement during a press conference with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen after a private meeting at Trump's Turnberry Golf Club in Scotland. Breaking, President Trump hits major home run with massive European trade deal while in Scotland. Zero tariffs, experts lose again. The EU will purchase $750 billion in U.S. energy, but also investing $600 billion in America on top of existing investments. Those $600 billion is kind of like what we heard from the other trade deals with Britain and other people, where Trump needs to build shipbuilding. We need to build our grid. We need to build energy. We need to mine rare earths. And we're going to try to do that in the United States to protect our national defense. And he's getting these countries like Japan to commit to invest in that, to help us regain our national security. Okay, so this is a major deal. Europe also agreed to purchase a vast amount of military equipment, Trump said. We don't know what that number is, he said, but went on to note that the purchase of military equipment would be in the hundreds of billions of dollars. So again, to jumpstart U.S. Manufacturing, and we've been talking every week, and we'll talk this week about the skilled trades, and your job ongoing is to talk to people about joining the skilled trades to fill the jobs that Trump is creating. Moreover, the U.S. will pay a 50% tariff rate to import products into the U.S., ranging from automobiles to other goods. Now, what's going on is Wall Street and the deep state just do not want this. They do not want Trump creating a middle class. They do not want you and I to become prosperous again, okay? They had it good when they shipped all our jobs to China and Vietnam and Cambodia and all over the world. They've made trillions of dollars. So they're poo-pooing all this tariff stuff like it's not a big deal. But here's something that I want to play for you that I want you to take away from this, because there's got a lot of tariff news, okay? And it's all good for America. But Trump said at the beginning that we're being ripped off. That since World War II, when we had all the cards, we had all the manufacturing, we had the biggest military, we had nuclear weapons, and we were a superpower, and we should help everybody else. And we have for 75 years. But then it got out of hand. Then it became predatory, where people were preying on the U.S. And Trump said this. Listen, Canada's ripping us off. Mexico, Europe, everybody's ripping us off because it's not fair trade. All these people say, oh, tariffs are bad. You should have free and fair trade. Yeah, free trade, but fair trade. But it wasn't fair. You want the proof? We always bring the receipts. Listen to what the head of the EU says in this video clip. It justifies the tariffs in spades, and it tells the lie that they're all telling you that, oh, this is punitive and this is unfair that the U.S. is doing this. Listen to what she says.
What are the U.S. concessions? What is the U.S. giving up in the deal, if anything?
So the starting point was an imbalance, a surplus on our side and a deficit on the U.S. side. And we wanted to rebalance the trade relation. And we wanted to do it in a way that trade goes on between the two of us across the Atlantic, because the two biggest economies should have a good trade flow between us. And I think we hit exactly the point we wanted to find. Rebalance, but enable trade on both sides, which means good jobs on both sides of the Atlantic, means prosperity on both sides of the Atlantic, and that was important for us.
Okay, what did she say? She said the starting point was an imbalance, a surplus on our side and a deficit on the U.S. side, and we wanted to rebalance the trade relations. There it is, folks. There it is. Trump was right. They were ripping us off. Now, what does this all mean, right? To you, to your income, to your children, to your family, to our communities, to our nation. He announces that the deals just keep coming. Then he announces a trade deal with South Korea. And many people wondered if that was going to be a good deal. Under the agreement, South Korea will invest $350 billion in assets owned and controlled by the United States, with specifics to be selected by Trump himself. In addition, the Southeast Asian country will purchase $100 billion worth of liquefied natural gas or other energy products from the United States. It will also agree that South Korea will completely open trade with the United States and that they will accept American products, including cars, trucks, agriculture, etc. This is the thing that you need to understand and tell everyone. Other countries were keeping us from selling our products in their country. We want fair markets, don't we? Their markets weren't fair. Now, American agriculture is going to have a whole new marketplace. American car makers are going to have a whole new marketplace. That's the idea. So it works both ways. Not only are we getting these tariff revenues from these countries that are going to help us balance our budget, okay, and reduce the debt down the road, even this year, but it's also going to give us more income and more jobs because we can sell around the world where we couldn't before. It's brilliant. But, they don't want you to know that. They don't want you to tell every people this is brilliant, that Trump's smart. Oh, no, he's not an expert economist, but he's getting it right. And so he gave an August 1st was the deadline for people to make a deal. Yeah, if you didn't make a deal, FAFO, right? F around and find out. Here's what's going on. White House drops new tariff plan on eve of Trump's trade deadline. The White House updated its tariff plan on Thursday evening, hours before President Trump's deadline for new trade agreements was set to kick in. The new plan pushes the implementation of tariffs back a week from August 1st to August 7th to give customs and border officials time to adjust to the new levies leveled on dozens of countries. The new plan also reveals a host of tariffs that are set to kick in now. The 10% universal tariff will remain the floor for tariff rates for trade with the United States, meaning everybody that brings anything in the United States will pay a 10% tariff that goes into the Treasury to help pay for our ongoing expenses. Other countries that have trade deficits with the United States, meaning they import more from the United States they will export, they will receive a 10% tariff rate. For countries that have trade surpluses with the United States, their goods will be tariffed at least 15%. So if you're importing more than we're exporting to you, you're going to pay a 15% penalty. Other countries that have struck new trade agreements with the United States will have various trade tariffs based on their current agreement. More than a dozen countries will face tariffs higher than 15%, ranging from 19% to 41%. President Trump is using tariffs as a necessary and powerful tool to put America first after many years of unsustainable trade deficits that threaten our economy and national security, the White House said in a statement, according to CNN. Alongside its new tariff plan for international trade, the White House announced steeper tariffs on Canada. The Trump administration said in a statement the United States would be increasing the tariffs on Canada from 25 to 35%, with the higher tariff set to go into effect August 1st. It's in effect right now. Why? Canada has failed to cooperate in curbing the ongoing flood of fentanyl and other illicit drugs, and it has retaliated against the United States for the president's actions to address this unusual and extraordinary threat to the U.S. Ontario Prime Minister Doug Ford hit back immediately at the White House, saying Canada shouldn't sell for anything less than the right deal. Now is not the time to roll over. We need to stand our ground. Go ahead. Stand your ground, Canada. Make my day, because you can't win a trade war with the United States. And then they went and provoked Trump and joined France in recognizing a two-state solution in Gaza, trying to recognize a Palestinian state, when Trump said, don't do that. We're trying to solve this. This doesn't help. Canada went ahead. Canada is not our friend. The people of Canada, I know many Canadians watch this podcast, you are our friends. We supported you in the trucker COVID strike and all that. But you elected a government that hates what America stands for. You elected a totalitarian socialist government. We will never work with them. You're going to get crushed. You're going to get crushed. And that's a good thing, because you're not our friend, Canada. You're not our friend. Your government is our enemy. They are with the globalists and with the Chinese. That's who they're with. We will never put up with that. So the tariffs are supposed to be a bad thing, supposed to cause inflation, supposed to cause unemployment, supposed to be a damper on everything. What happens? U.S. economy rockets up to 3% growth in second quarter under Trump. The U.S. economy under President Trump exceeded expectations and grew at an annualized rate of 3% in the second quarter, according to Commerce Department data released on Wednesday. The Commerce Department report found the U.S. economy, as measured by gross domestic product, made the gains from April through June. GDP is a measure of a basket of goods and services to measure growth throughout the U.S. economy. The 3% figure exceeds the Dow Jones estimate at 2.3% and reverses a 0.5% decline the first quarter. They didn't just miss it. They missed it by like 33%. Okay? Heather Long, chief economist of the Naval Federal Credit Union, said the word of the summer for the economy is resilient. The consumer is hanging in there, but still on edge until the trade deals are done. Consumer spending rose by 1.4% in the second quarter, and exports declined by 1.8%. We want that. We want less. We want more exports. We want more exports. That's why these trade deals say you're opening up your area and less imports. The GDP data also shows that inflation is declining, although it has yet to be completely subside. So what happened? The Federal Reserve was meeting on Wednesday, and Trump wants them to reduce interest rates. There's no reason for them to be this high. Every other country in the world has lowered them, and the Fed didn't do it. The Fed met Wednesday and held its overnight borrowing rate steady, where it has been since December. There were, however, 2 dissenting votes this time, which is very unusual in the Fed. Because I told you last week, the Fed chairman doesn't just say, we're raising rates, we're lowering rates. There's a vote, okay, of the people who are part of the Fed. And there were 2 dissenting votes. So what happens this Friday after they do this? Federal Reserve Governor Adriana Kugler will step down from her position on the central bank's board, the Fed announced on Friday, handing President Donald Trump a sooner than anticipated opportunity to install a new policymaker who aligns with his vision for interest rates. Trump and his allies have applied intense pressure on the Fed chair, Jerome Powell, to lower interest rates, but he has not done so. Trump's departing the White House on Friday told reporters that he is very happy that he has an open spot on the Fed board, and he believes that Kugler is stepping down because she disagrees with Powell on the interest rates. They're going to appoint someone, Trump's going to appoint someone to fill this chair, and then that person will replace Jerome Powell. That's what I think is going to happen. And the word out there is that they're going to reduce interest rates by like a quarter point the next meeting. And then maybe once again, Wall Street is betting 90% chance they're going to reduce interest rates by another quarter point later this year. Nowhere near enough. It should be reduced by a full percentage point, if not, as Trump says, 3 percentage points. But then this comes out, and you need to take note of this, because this whole podcast is about, knowing things that affect you. And we told you guys all of the Biden years that they were lying to us, and it's since been proven, about the jobs numbers and about the economy. These are people you and I pay. These are government employees who are supposed to be experts who we pay to analyze the data and tell us the truth, and all they do is lie. So this bombshell came out this morning before I was getting ready to do the show that I think is probably good news. President Donald Trump announced that he has directed the termination of the Commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Writing in a Truth Social post shortly after the July jobs report, Trump accused BLS Commissioner Erica McEntefar of manipulating the jobs data and falsifying the employment numbers before the 2024 election to try and boost presidential candidate Kamala Harris's chance of victory. He's actually accusing her of intentionally manipulating the jobs numbers to affect the election. If that is true, she should be charged with election interference, with crimes, not just fired. I'm sick of this, that they just fire these people. She will be replaced with someone much more competent and qualified. We need accurate job numbers, the president said. Important numbers like this must be fair and accurate, and they can't be manipulated for political purposes. His comments come as the BLS reported that the U.S. economy added 73,000 new jobs last month in July, below the consensus forecast. The federal agency also revised the May and June numbers lower by a combined 258,000 jobs, which places the 3-month employment growth rate at just 35,000. In the first 6 months of 2025, a downward revision totaling 461,000. What the heck? Are these job numbers to be believed or not? And I think we have to raise the question, are the people that are doing this in the federal government lying to help Trump? What the hell's the truth? That's what we got to have. I'm glad he fired someone. I think if they were doing it for political purposes, they should be charged. You can't do that. It's called election interference. And there's a story in the second half of the podcast I'm going to show where Trump is saying the same thing. But that's really interesting, okay? And then this story, man, we just reject this wholeheartedly. Josh Hawley joins Trump in proposing tariff rebates for families. Tariff rebates for families. Americans deserve a tax rebate after 4 years of Biden policies, the Republican senator added. Senator Josh Hawley introduced legislation to send tariff rebate checks to U.S. families. Last week, before departing for Scotland, President Donald Trump proposed issuing rebates to U.S. taxpayers for tariff income collected this year. We have so much coming in, we're thinking about a little rebate, the president said. What? Hawley is seeking to follow through on this idea. The 14-page American Workers Rebate Act, introduced on July 28th, would send tariff rebate checks of at least $600 per adult and dependent children and a dependent child. A family of four could receive up to $2,400. This is shades of COVID. The bill would allow for the tariff-funded benefits to be larger per person if the tax revenues exceed current policies. In addition, the legislation would reduce the final amount by 5% for single filers with an additional adjusted gross income exceeding $75,000 or joint filers with a gross income of more than $150,000. What are they talking about? We have so much money coming in, we have to think about a little rebate? We're overspending $2 trillion a year. We have a $37 trillion deficit. What are they talking about? No American's in favor of this. You know what I think they're thinking about? You know what I think they're thinking about? I think they're thinking about the tariffs might actually raise cost of goods. And that in 2026, people are going to be hurting a little bit. And if you want to win the 2026 election, you steal a book out of the Democrat playbook and you start writing checks. Warning, Will Robinson. Warning. For those of you who are younger than me, you don't know what that means. It's from a TV show years ago called Lost in Space. And sometimes I feel like I'm lost in space. Warning, Will Robinson. Something stinks here. And I don't like the fact that President Trump is thinking about it. Okay? We don't have all kinds of money. If we did, this next story wouldn't be necessary. I put this out to all of you, and it's an important thing for you to share with people. Russ Vought from OMB says Trump is considering the use of pocket rescissions to cut spending because we know we can't get Congress to cut anything. 0.1% of spending they could hardly cut. So how do you cut spending? This is a tool. This is a tactic. President White House considers pocket rescissions to sidestep Congress. Here's what you need to know. President Trump is considering a move called a pocket rescission that would effectively rescind federal funding and potentially bypass congressional approval. The strategy occurs when a president submits a rescission proposal under the Impoundment Control Act, requesting Congress to cancel previously appropriated funds within 45 days of the end of the fiscal year on September 30th. So 45 days before September 30th, Trump and Vought say, we want to rescind these other programs, okay? Billions of dollars. The funds are withheld during the 45-day congressional review period, and if Congress doesn't act before the fiscal year ends, the funding expires. So you submit it with the idea that Congress won't act. The rescission request is made outside of the fiscal year end window. If Congress doesn't act within 45 days, the funding is released and spending in the impound program resumes. It is very possible we might use pocket rescissions as one of our executive tools. It's been used before. Critics say it's an overreach of executive power, and Congress has also expressed concerns about it, but Vought said the Government Accountability Office has said it was legal in the 1970s, and it's fully legal approach to cut spending. So the President of the United States has to resort to tactics like this because the people you and I elect, your congressman, your senator, won't cut anything. They won't cut anything. It's a shame, but I'm glad to see they're actually going to try to do that. Good. You should tell your representatives to cooperate with this and help cut spending because you can't just raise revenue. We've got to cut spending. So this was a really exciting story that you probably didn't hear about. All right. But this is important because what most people don't understand, the big, beautiful bill, cut some programs and reined in some spending, but then it spent more money because it gave no tax on tips. That reduces our revenue, no tax on overtime, the Social Security adjustments that I'm going to benefit from, and many of you will. Those raise our spending, okay? And so the net is we didn't cut hardly anything. But the other part of it that Trump was great on in the first term and is really strong this time is regulation. Regulation is a tax on you and I. Every regulation costs money that you and I pay in higher prices, okay, for all kinds of goods and services. So look at this story. This is awesome. DOGE builds AI tool to cut, get this, 50% of federal regulations. 50%. Wow. The U.S. DOGE service is using a new artificial intelligence tool to slash federal regulations with the goal of eliminating half of Washington's regulatory mandates by the first anniversary of President Donald Trump's inauguration, meaning next January, according to documents obtained by the Washington Post. The tool, called the DOGE AI Deregulation Decision Tool, is supposed to analyze roughly 200,000 federal regulations to determine which can be eliminated because they are now no longer required by law, according to a PowerPoint presentation obtained by the Washington Post that is dated July 1st, and it outlines DOGE's plans. Roughly 100,000 of those rules would be deemed worthy of trimming, the PowerPoint estimates, mostly through the automated tool with some staff feedback. The PowerPoint also suggests the AI tool could save the United States trillions of dollars by reducing compliance requirements, slashing the federal budget, and unlocking unspecified external investment. The tool has been used to complete decisions on 1,083 regulatory sections of the Department of Housing and Urban Development in under 2 weeks. So they took this tool, looked at 1,083 regulatory sections of the HUD rules and regulations, and found that they could cut 50%. As well as documents obtained by the Post confirm that the AI tool was recently used to review hundreds, if not more than 1,000 lines of regulations at that agency and such edits or deletions. The tool was developed by engineers brought into government as part of Elon Musk's DOGE project, according to two federal officials directly familiar with it. Now, folks, they're saying that, now again, let me put it in context. You may remember, if you watch this podcast, I covered the fact that the Supreme Court ruled that the Chevron rule, where federal governments, the courts said that agencies like the EPA, the Labor Department, every agency could put rules and regulations in that Congress never approved. And in the Chevron decision, they've said no. You can't do that. There is no law-making ability for government bureaucrats and agencies. And that's all we had. The court said that Congress has to tell the agency, this is how you implement it. So by using DOGE to look at 200,000 regulations in government, it can see which ones were authorized by Congress or not, and therefore are illegal. This could be a godsend. This could be amazing what it could do for us, okay? And so I pulled an example that I'm going to share with you about the auto industry to give you an idea of how much these regulations hurt you and me in our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity, as well as our nation. So here's a story that I pulled. Making automobiles great again. Making automobiles great again. In all the hoopla about the one big beautiful bill, one provision went completely overlooked. But that provision is now primed to usher in the rebirth of a great American car. Back in 1975, in a panic over Arab oil embargo and phony predictions that the world was running out of oil, remember that? Congress passed the Energy Policy and Conservation Act. That bill gave government bureaucrats the power to set corporate average fuel economy standards for cars sold in the U.S. Under the rule, if all the cars sold by an automaker in a given year failed to meet the government's mileage per gallon target, the company would pay massive fines. The standards started at 18 miles per gallon in 1978 and quickly rose to 27 miles per gallon just 6 years later. Although these rules are little known to the public, what they produced was unmitigated disaster that caused thousands of needless highway deaths, raised car prices, and didn't end up saving much fuel. Okay, what do I mean by that? Since the easiest way to extend a car's mileage is to make it smaller and lighter, Detroit radically downsized its fleets. Wheelbases became shorter, engines became less powerful, and the design features that looked good but added weight were jettisoned. Okay? Because smaller and lighter cars are less safe, this radical downsizing resulted in thousands of excess deaths. A 1988 study found that traffic fatalities were as much as 27% higher than in 1985 because the standards had forced car makers to build smaller cars. They benefited imports. The foreign car companies, remember the Volkswagen Bug and the Hondas and Toyotas were all little cars. They sold more. Detroit lost. Distorted the market. Not only that, but because the law imposed different standards on cars and trucks, it perversely led to an explosion of gas-guzzling minivans and SUVs, which were the only cars that car makers could meet consumer demand with for larger cars while complying with the standards. It also caused, more truck sales. Okay, so again, they have this idea, we're never going to have oil. We have to raise gas standards. We're going to put in these regulations, force them on the car makers, thus the American people, and it has all these negative effects. It raised prices. Raising fuel economy standards significantly added to the cost of cars. That's where things stood until Trump signed the One Big Beautiful Bill. Okay? So in 2012, President Obama issued a ruling setting a 54.5 miles per gallon standard by 2025. Think about that. That means all electric cars. Could not be done. Just could not be done. And if you didn't do that, you were going to get fined billions of dollars. What happens? Donald Trump signs the big, beautiful bill. What does Congress do? In a rare example of creative thinking, Republican lawmakers decided not to wait on regulators to lower the standard and instead killed it outright by setting the fine for missing the miles per gallon rule to a $0 amount. This is the same trick they used to kill the dreaded Obamacare mandate. Meaning, regulations were hurting all of us, hurting our economy. And in the big, beautiful bill, they said, well, we got to get the agencies to roll this back, but we're not going to wait. We're going to set the fine at $0. There's your example of how regulations hurt all of us, okay? And I'm going to follow that up with, I told you last week that the EPA was making a big move to get rid of this 2009 rule that Obama's people made that basically set the stage for all the Green New Deal stuff, right? They basically said carbon dioxide was a poison and that, because of that, you had to cut everything from fuel emissions to oil and gas drilling and everything else. Energy Department attacks climate science in contentious report. So the left's response was when we did this, when the EPA actually did it this week, they said, oh, this is evil. You're not following the science. Sea level rise is not accelerating. More carbon dioxide in the atmosphere will be good for plant growth. We've shown that. The computer models used to predict global warming trend to exaggerate future temperature increases. These arguments, routinely made by people who reject the scientific consensus on climate, were included in an unusual report released by the Energy Department on Tuesday. The report, which is meant to support the Trump administration's sweeping effort to roll back climate regulations, which are based on non-science, contends that the mainstream scientific view of climate change is too dire and overlooks the positive effects of warming planet. Climate scientists said the 151-page report misrepresented or cherry-picked a large body of research on global warming. Zeke House and farther, a climate scientist at Berkeley Earth and the payment company Stripe called the document a scattershot collection of oft-debunked skeptic claims that are not representative of the broader climate science research funding. The report demonstrates the extent to which Trump is using his second term to wage a battle against climate change research, a long-held goal of some conservative groups and fossil fuel companies. While the first Trump administration often undermined federal scientists and rolled back more than 100 environmental policies, officials mostly refrained from trying to debate climate science in the open. This time, they are. They're calling it out. The climate science wasn't science, folks. It was fake. And all of government around the world put in regulations based on this fake science, that the earth is warming and it's disastrous and that we're going to be all dead in 12 years, right? It was all a lie. But it was a lie that cost us trillions of dollars. And Trump is saying no more, and we're going to fight it. The Environmental Protection Agency this week cited the Energy Department report in its proposal to repeal a landmark 2009 finding that greenhouse gases, including carbon dioxide, pose a threat to public health. Okay? The determination known as the endangerment finding underpins the agency's legal authority to limit greenhouse gases emissions from cars, power plants, and other industrial sources. It was climate commies attacking capitalism. This was all created by the Chinese to destroy the West. It was a weapon. And those of you who are new to this podcast, go back, look on our website. You'll see all the evidence. The whole climate hoax, and it really was a hoax, but it also was a crime, was created to destroy the West. Now we're not saying this, it's true. The new report also comes a month after the Trump administration dismissed hundreds of scientists and experts who had been compiling the federal government's flagship analysis on how climate change is affecting the country. Trump fired them. He fired the phonies. That analysis, known as the National Climate Assessment, was set to explore how rising temperatures will influence public health, agriculture, fisheries, etc. It's a full-scale attack on science, says David White, who directs the Global Institute of Sustainability and Innovation at Arizona State University. This was present in the first Trump administration, but it's being exasperated in the second. Oh, cry with all your tears. You're firing all the liars. You're firing all the liars. And so, again, we always bring the receipts. And here's your proof that they were liars and that this was intended to mislead. Radical Climate Group targeted courts to spread propaganda to influence court rulings. The Radical Climate Group spread propaganda to influence court rulings. Can Americans still trust their neutral institutions as radical activists increasingly capture the levers of power in government, media, and academia? A disturbing pattern has emerged. Seemingly objective organizations now serve as Trojan horses for partisan agendas, eroding the foundations of our republic while claiming to strengthen them. One particular alarming example is unfolding in our courts, where those sworn to impartial justice are being systematically fed one-sided information. What do we mean? Behind closed doors, a sophisticated operation is targeting the judicial system itself, potentially impacting rulings that affect every American's household economic future, while claiming to offer objective education. This effort follows a familiar playbook: present ideology as fact, exclude dissenting voices, and position activists as neutral experts. This is from Just the News. The Climate Judiciary Project claims to provide judges with authoritative, objective, and trusted education on climate science, the impacts of climate change, and the way climate science is arising in the law. Critics say its curriculum focuses exclusively on the most alarmist positions of climate science and lacks any presentation of disagreements or uncertainties that exist within the research. It's all very lopsided and in one direction. The Environmental Law Institute stood by the information the project provides judges. In a statement, the institute said the modules are fact-based and science first. But they're not. The troubling agenda became clear when Fox News uncovered private email exchanges between judges involved with the project. In 2022, Judge Travis Lasser, Vice Chancellor of Delaware Court of Chancery, shared a climate presentation with video with colleagues, specifically instructing them not to distribute it widely, noting that the powers that be will be happier if you did not share it. The presentation featured Michael Gerard, the Columbia Law School Sabin Center, discussing how climate lawsuits could potentially bankrupt energy companies. Which they're saying is a good thing. If you rule this way, you could bankrupt Chevron and Exxon and the gas and oil companies. Isn't that great? Hardly a neutral education perspective for judges who might preside over such cases. Even more concerning, multiple judges responded with enthusiasm, praising the presentation. Okay? It's in every part of our life. So we talk about the Truman Show. Those of you who don't know what the Truman Show is, go look it up. It was a movie that showed a baby was born on a TV set and never was allowed to see they were living in a TV set until he became like 20-some years old and figured it out. The Truman Show. We're living in the Truman Show. Nothing is real. The other thing I always use is The Matrix, the movie The Matrix, which freaks me out. We're not living in the real world. Well, we weren't. Everything that you had happening in your life was based on lies that had an agenda. Our position is that those lies were created and promoted by, excuse me, created and promoted by the communist Chinese to destroy the West so they could rule. That's their plan. I'm going to show you that plan in the second half of this podcast. Whether it's trans, on our website, 2 Chinese billionaires funded the whole trans lie to destroy what? American families, communities, sports, right? I've done stories over and over. All the climate organizations, like these ones advising judges, all got their funding from China. The WHO, the WEF, they're all communists who want to destroy the West. There's your proof. I just gave it to you, okay? And so I'm just trying to make sure you understand why we have to be careful about what we share with you so that you understand the truth. The truth is, yes, there's a thing called weather. There is no evidence of more hurricanes, more tornadoes, more floods. Yeah, there's been a lot of floods this summer. It's been hot this summer. But in a historical basis, it's all within range. And with science and technology, and with capitalism, we have the resources to overcome these threats. You don't change government. You don't destroy the thing that pulled billions of people out of poverty. You know what pulled billions of people out of poverty? Cheap energy did. Fossil fuels did. That's a fact. Look on our website for the Jordan Peterson podcast in the video section that talk about this. The facts are clear. We aren't living a world based on facts until now. Until Donald Trump is firing the liars, firing the people that can't do a damn jobs report. How can you be that wrong? These are our experts. That's why RFK Jr. is what he's doing with Maha and getting rid of all the experts on vaccines and stuff. All right, so this has been a long first half of the show. I got a couple more things and then we'll take a break. I want to just talk a little bit about illegal immigration because it's the big winner. It's the big winner. All right. Trump DOJ sets all-time record in prosecution of illegal aliens. Trump's sweeping crackdowns using the Department of Justice has reported set an all-time record in prosecutions of illegal immigrants, a stunning reversal from the open border era of former President Joe Biden. According to a new report, Trump's Justice Department had a record-breaking month for criminal prosecutions of illegal aliens in June, notching more than 3,000 cases last month. If you're coming here illegally to live and work, being in a federal penitentiary for 2 years isn't going to allow you to do that. If you're, the Washington Times reports that Trump's DOJ set a record by filing more than 3,000 illegal reentry cases in June alone, targeting illegal aliens who were deported but were caught when they attempted to sneak back across the border. Also in June, the DOJ prosecuted more than 3,200 cases for simply illegal entry. While not a record high, the number was significant. The figure made up over 50% of all Border Patrol arrests last month. So they're working hard to not only arrest, but prosecute these people who are breaking laws. And so then they released a new video that I want to play for you to encourage people to leave, to self-deport. Remember they did a video earlier? Kristi Noem just came out with this. This is running on TV all over the country.
If you're an illegal alien living in the United States, this runway is your future. Because one way or another, you're getting on a plane home. But how you get there is up to you. I'm Kristi Noem, the United States Secretary of Homeland Security. You can make it easy, like others who've made the right choice, by downloading the CBP Home app and safely self-deporting. They received financial assistance up to $1,000, a free flight home, and they have the chance to come back to America legally. Or your trip home can be hard. We will find you. You will be fined thousands of dollars, detained, and forcefully removed from our country. Leave legally because you won't miss this flight. And it's your last chance to get on board the right way. Under President Trump's strong leadership, we follow the law, and our border is secure.
So the message is clear. Leave the country on your own. We'll even give you $1,000 to do it. And it's working. Before the ad campaign, a significant number of illegal immigrants had taken up the Trump administration's previous self-deportation efforts. Estimates on the number of illegal aliens who have chosen to self-deport range from tens of thousands, according to DHS, to 1 million, according to an analyst of U.S. employment data. The Mexican government has also acknowledged that at least 56,000 Mexican nationals have returned from the United States. So share that video, let people see it, because we want them to self-deport because that's the cheapest way for us to get them out, okay? But I do want to say that Trump achieved a record 1,300 deportations per day. The U.S. Immigration and Enforcement, ICE, is now deporting nearly 1,300 migrants per day, according to a new agency data released on July 31st. The figures show a significant ramp up under the Trump administration and put the agency on track to surpass a modern-day deportation record set by Barack Obama in 2012. As of July 26, ICE had formally removed 287,000 individuals in fiscal year 2025. Okay? So that's good. But that ain't nowhere near the millions we have to get rid of, right? There's 12 million people at least that we think they let in on purpose to destroy our country, right? So that's why the big, beautiful bill was so important. It's unbelievable. Tom Homan had to take down his LinkedIn account because he had so many people, so many retired border agents trying to get back in. They're offering bonuses for people. I understand there were like 1 million applicants to become Border Patrol agents. They're building these new centers to house the illegals. And baby, this 1,300 figure is going to be 13,000 a month or something very soon. They're ramping it up. It's beautiful. That's what we wanted. Still, every poll shows, despite the left's, oh, you're deporting this good Maryland father and, this guy from Nashville and all that. No one's buying it. Americans firmly, like 60-some%, all Americans say deport all the illegals, not just the criminals. Not just the criminals. And we're doing it. And I want to close with this one last story because I think it's really important because we are about justice. This show is about equal justice under the law. That's what we're trying to reestablish. DOJ charged more than 50 alleged anti-ICE rioters in California, prosecutors say. So we want to deport these people. The Democrat communists, because they know it's destroying America, want to stop us. So they're protesting, they're attacking ICE agents, they're trying to dox them, they're doing everything. We can't give in. We have to defeat them. And the LA riots were an important event because they were trying to start a George Floyd thing, and Trump stomped it out like that with the National Guard. But here's the other part. We're charging them. The Department of Justice has dramatically ramped up prosecutions stemming from anti-deportation riots in Central California that erupted in June. Acting U.S. Attorney Bill Esseley, a President Trump appointee, said in X post that his office has charged 53 people with assault on federal agents or interference with immigration enforcement since rioters began setting fires and assaulting law enforcement in Los Angeles. The widespread rioting kicked off in Los Angeles on June 6th after a local union leader was arrested for allegedly trying to obstruct ICE agents transporting migrants. Left-wing activists then took to social media to urge supporters of illegal immigrants to gather at federal buildings, and hundreds showed up to protest. The Small Business Administration estimated that about $1 billion in damages was done. And so federal law enforcement have been tracing the money which connected to the violence for possible prosecution. There's a lot more to come, he said, but we have charged 53 people, 9 cases have proceeded to a grand jury indictment, 7 others waived an indictment, and 4 have pleaded guilty. 7 others have been dismissed with a chance to be refiled, while 26 others are making their way through the court process and are in various stages. The left has never seen this. They could do this stuff all during Trump's first term and all during Biden's term with impunity. Even in Portland, Oregon, where they were attacking federal buildings for 150 days in a row. Oh, were they surprised? A bunch of them got arrested and are going to prison for a long time. Law and order. That's what this is about. That's what you and I are fighting for. That is what protects our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. Okay? All right. It's a long first half of the show. A lot of important stuff. Hope you enjoyed it. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be back to the second half. You've been watching the We the People Convention News and Opinion Podcast. My name is Tom Zawistowski. The We the People Convention News and Opinion radio program is paid for by donors like you. You can donate to the We the People Convention and support our cause by going to wethepeopleconvention.org or by sending your check in any amount to We the People Convention, P.O. Box 6211, Akron, Ohio 44312. When you're playing a video, including our podcast, you'll see this little cloud button. And if you click it, it'll actually download the video to your hard disk. And this works on our podcast page as well. If you're playing our podcast, and it's going to be loud, so I won't play it for much, but there's our podcast playing, and you can see this little, download button. Okay. The other thing you got to notice on our podcast page is that there's a link here where you can send me a message about this podcast. Hey, it was great. Hey, I didn't like it. Something was wrong, or here's a correction, that kind of thing. You can use that link. And then these are the stories that I covered in this particular podcast. And you'll see there's links that go to the stories, to the articles that I used in reporting on that. So you can click on that. You'll also see that you can sign up for our emails and text messages, but you can also watch our podcast on Roku TV and on Amazon Fire TV. And these are the instructions for doing that. So this is all on our podcast page, right on the front page where the yellow button was. If you click there, this is our podcast page. These are the instructions for watching on Roku TV or Amazon Fire. And I watch our podcast on TV. It just feels more comfortable. So you can do that. We're also on Rumble. If you go to Rumble, you should join Rumble. And it's Tom Z at WTPC. You'll see our podcast there. So you can get us a lot of different ways, including on Apple iTunes. And then this is an audio version of our podcast. If you click here, it'll just play the audio of the podcast. It will not, show you the video. So people can, listen to that while they're jogging or, working out, working in the yard, or just relaxing and just want to listen to the audio and not watch the video. And again, this is available on phone, on your iPad, on your laptop, on your computer, any way you want. And you can share this whatever you see. If you're on a page that you really like and you see an article that you think, geez, I've got to share this article, with someone in my family. You can send them an email by clicking on the little envelope. You can post it on Parler or MeWe. If you click on this, you get all kinds of options, where you can put it on Twitter or Facebook, whatever, which we don't support, but you can do whatever you want. So we ask that you share what you see on our We the People convention site, and that you get more people to look at it, because that's the whole idea here, to help educate people, inform them. And then, as I said before, Link, we're not just about talk, we're about action. And in my podcast every week, which is published every Saturday, so if the new podcast usually comes out every Saturday, and in that podcast, I will ask you to do certain things that will help protect and defend your individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. So that's the We the People Convention website. Come back often, use it to be informed, and share it with others. Thanks a lot. All right, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed the first half of the podcast. Remember, we have the page, our podcast page, and even on YouTube and on Rumble, they list all the stories by the time, so you can skip the story you want. On our chapters player, which comes out on Sunday, we have a player below our regular player that lists, you can go through all the stories, but if you click on it, it'll take you right to that story, but it'll also give you a link that you can forward to people to share just that story, okay? So use that. We are on X, Tom Z, WTPC. We are on Facebook, We the People Convention. We are on TikTok, Tom Z. We're out there, on MeWe, we're on Gab. So follow us, share our information, because that's part of the point of this podcast. Not just to inform you, but to inform others, and then get them to watch the podcast so that they can take the action that we talk about, in this podcast. For instance, sharing, the story with people who still think the Russia hoax is real, to help win that narrative. So I appreciate you sticking with me in the first part of the show. It was a lot of important information. Just remember, this is a podcast. You can stop it at any time. You can rewind and just kind of watch the story again if there's something that you didn't quite get. But we just do our best to share stories that impact you, that have an impact on all of us. And we're going to do that again here in the second half. And as you know, if you watch the show very often, we kind of always do the international affairs. And, there's important things to talk about, folks. There's a lot of stuff going on that ain't good. And so we're going to talk about it right now. So let's start with the mess in Gaza. Arab nations urge Hamas to give up arms and power in Gaza for the first time. Well, I'm surprised this is the first time, but I'm glad to see this. A number of Arab nations called on Hamas to relinquish its arms and rule over the Gaza Strip on Tuesday in an unprecedented move by the United States. The 22-member Arab League, which includes Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar, backed a declaration at the UN on Tuesday calling for terrorist group to relinquish its power in the Gaza Strip. The move marks the first time the Arab states have collectively called for the removal of Hamas, with many also condemning the deadly October 7th, 2023 attack on Israel for the first time. Okay. Yes. What the hell? Why would Israel ever agree to have a mortal enemy right next to its borders? Why would you do that? It's insane. And not to mention the fact Hamas wouldn't exist if Iran, who hates Israel, wasn't funding them. I've said to you guys, I think Israel should close off Gaza, not repair it, not let anyone live there, and keep it as a memorial to what happens to people when they attack innocents and machete babies and kill pregnant women and do the horrible things that Hamas did. Leave it as a monument to their destruction. Okay? President Trump wants to make it into a resort. We have different views, okay? But the bottom line is, I don't know how you can have peace if Hamas is there. But the problem is the propaganda is so strong both ways, and we try to fight through that. You and I, we work in this show to find the truth. Okay? People have accused me of being too pro-Israel. I've accused people of being too anti-Israel. What the hell is the truth? Well, the New York Times has a story this week, okay? New York Times did a story about the whole theme, which the Qataris, I believe, started, was that Israel was committing genocide. Marjorie Taylor Greene went on with Tucker Carlson and said, Israel's committing genocide. They're trying to kill the Palestinians, of which there are no Palestinians. There's no state of Palestine. They're Arabs. Genocide? And the evidence was this picture of this starving child. Here's the picture on your screen. For those of you who aren't watching, I'll read to you. The New York Times admits that emaciated boy they flashed on their front page as proof of famine in Gaza was actually suffering from a serious medical condition, which is why his family all looked healthy. Okay? Here's the picture of the New York Times exploiting this child's illness. We have then the New York Times finally came back on July 29th. Okay, they printed this thing on the 25th. 4 days later, the New York Times said, we've appended an editor's note to a story about Mohammed Zakari al-Matawa, a child in Gaza who was diagnosed with severe malnutrition. After publication, the Times learned that he also had pre-existing health problems, see below. He wasn't starving at all. Even in their retraction, they couldn't admit they made up the lie. His standing next to him is his brother, who looks completely healthy. Why would the baby be starving and not his brother? It's a lie. And everybody picked it up. Everybody picked it up. Okay? Media outlets employed the photo of the emaciated 20-month-old Gaza child to substantiate claims that Israel is intentionally starving residents of the Hamas-controlled zone. But the legacy media never reported the child suffers from numerous medical programs. Within hours, almost every major outlet was using the image to tell the same story, investigative reporter David Collier noted. Sky News, CNN, The Guardian, Daily Mail, New York Times, Times UK, they all ran with it, reinforcing the message, Gaza is gripped by mass starvation, except this image proves none of it. Wider and unpublished pictures show his healthy brother. And so, what are we to believe? President Trump said, you can't fake starvation. Was he being fooled? So what did he do? He sent Huckabee, our Israeli ambassador, and I think Lutnick, to go to Gaza and see for themselves, because we don't know what the hell the truth is. I don't believe that Israel commits genocide when they were the victims of genocide. I can't believe that. Maybe I'm wrong. Some of you sure as hell believe it. But the problem is, you got to defeat evil. I put out in my emails a quote from Winston Churchill. It is not a choice to fight evil, for you must fight evil. Because it will either destroy you now or destroy you later, but it will surely destroy you. Hamas is evil. The Ayatollah Khomeini is evil. Some of you will say Israel is evil. I don't believe that. But you can't coexist with it. Do you understand? So the idea that, why can't Trump get peace in Gaza? You know why? Because you can't settle for anything less than Hamas being gone. Gone. You're gone. There's no place for you in this world, let alone right next to Israel. So that's not good news, okay? Then things are getting really bad with Russia. Trump shortens initial 50-day deadline for Putin to reach a peace deal with Ukraine. So he's overseas making the EU trade deal. And of course, people want to know what's the status of the Ukraine war. President Donald Trump reiterated on Monday that he is disappointed with Russian President Vladimir Putin, and he will reduce the 50-day deadline he gave to Putin 2 weeks ago to reach a peace deal with Ukraine. Speaking alongside British Prime Minister Keir Starmer in Scotland on Monday, Trump said that every time there appears to be some progress with Putin on any war, Russia launches another attack on Ukraine. We thought we had a settlement numerous times, and then President Putin goes out and starts launching rockets into some city. That's just not the way to do it. I'm going to make the new deadline in about 10 or 12 days from today. There's no reason in waiting. We just don't see any progress being made. Okay? Well, that causes a reaction by Dmitry Medvedev, who at one time was the premier. They played this stupid game with Putin and he switching positions. It didn't change the power structure at all. And he comes out and tells Trump, screw you. We are recession. You can't put restrictions on our trade and stuff. We have put in place things that will protect us from that. So what does Trump do? This morning, I wake up, Trump says, President Trump responded to multiple threats by former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev to attack the U.S. with nuclear weapons by ordering the deployment of 2 ballistic missile submarines to stand ready in case of a Russian miscalculation. Writing on Truth Social, President Trump said, based on the highly provocative statements of the former president of Russia, Dmitry Medvedev, who is now the deputy chairman of the Security Council of the Russian Federation, I have ordered 2 nuclear submarines to be positioned in appropriate regions just in case these foolish inflammatory statements are more than just that. Words are very important and can often lead to unintended consequences. I hope that this will not be one of those instances. Okay? What the hell are we doing, man? Steve Bannon keeps warning they're trying to drag us into World War III. We've got to be smart. So what's going to happen? I talked to you maybe 3 weeks ago about the Senate has really strict sanctions on Russia. Why hadn't they put on Russia when the war started? What have we been waiting for? It's time. Trump's going to drop the hammer. But what if it doesn't work? What if it doesn't work? This is scary, folks. This is scary. Keep an eye on this because clearly Trump does not have the cards he thought he had. And Russia ain't playing around. And neither is China, who Russia went to the whole Ukraine thing did what? The idiots. Well, maybe they weren't it. The useful idiots that the Chinese use in the United States, all the Democratic communists, all the government officials, and you go to wethepeopleconvention.org, go to the front page, there's a link right there that shows all the Chinese influenced political people in our country. The list is longer than both your arms. Kamala Harris, Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, Mitch McConnell, Cory Booker, every one of them are under the influence of the communist Chinese. Every one of them. To destroy our country and to destroy the West. And so by getting the war in Ukraine going, by not stopping it, by saying that Ukraine's going to become part of NATO, which Trump warned them not to do, what happened? We drove Russia and China together. The worst thing that could happen to us. The worst thing. And so they're having joint military exercises in the Pacific and all this stuff. So the guy that I go to for China is Gordon Chang. Maybe he's I don't know. He could end up being a spy. I don't know. All I know is he's the guy that all the news goes to, who does the research, okay, about what China's doing. He works at the Gatestone Institute. Brilliant guy, wrote a book about how China's trying to destroy us. He was telling everybody China was trying to destroy us when no one would listen. That's how I got engaged in that. Comes out with an article this week that I share with you guys. China is stockpiling grains and other key foods as Xi prepares for war. Okay? So while we're worried about the Epstein files and Russia, yeah, China's preparing for war. Don't believe it? Let me read. Preparing for war, Xi Jinping is taking back China's farms and trying to destroy America's farms. Here's the bullet point. Chinese Communist Party General Secretary Xi Jinping is mobilizing state entities, including, in this case, China's State Shipbuilding Corp, in his all-of-society effort to achieve food security. This effort is another signal that he's preparing to attack. There is one more element in Xi's food plan: attack American agriculture. In June, 3 Chinese nationals were charged with attempting to smuggle biological agents in the United States that would poison our food supply. Chinese attempts this year to smuggle pathogens may be only the latest incident in Chinese campaign to bring down American agriculture. China's regime, it appears, has been trying to plant invasive species in America since at least 2020. That year, Americans in all 50 states received seeds unsolicited from China. Here's these boxes of seeds. You could plant corn and cotton and wheat. They were genetically engineered to kill those crops in our country. Think that we're not at war? Why wouldn't we bomb the hell out of China when you found that out? Because everybody in government was bought by China. Xi Jinping cannot stop talking about fighting and has been readying both his military and civilian society for conflict. Xi, in short, appears to be stockpiling grains and preparations for war. Xi knows China cannot become self-sufficient, so he is, from all indications, making sure America can't be self-sufficient either. Yeah, you might want to read this article. You might want to share this article with people, because it goes into chapter and verse. Gordon Chang doesn't just give opinions. He brings the receipts. They have taken forests that they had planted previously, and they are tearing them down and planting, making them farms again. He's getting people from the cities to go work on farms again, because if we go to war, they don't have enough food to feed their people. Serious stuff that you heard here, you probably didn't hear anywhere else. Okay, little lighter news, but tied to China. What's one of our biggest problems with China? Was it 90% of our pharmaceuticals are manufactured there? Didn't we find that out in COVID? Even the gloves, the masks, all the nonsense, were all made in China. Trump issues 60-day deadline for drug makers to lower drug prices in America. He had tried to tell them when he signed an executive order months ago, and they did nothing. In a letter to 17 pharmaceutical companies, the president calls for swift action to implement most favored nation prescription drug pricing. He has told the world's CEOs 60 days ago to do this. Fulfilling a campaign promise, he issued the most favored nation prescription drug executive order on May 12th. Prescription drug prices in the United States were higher than anywhere else in the world, more than twice as much on average, according to a 2024 report by the Department of Health and Human Services. For the most expensive medications, the disparity is even greater. Since he made his declaration on May 12th, drug makers have responded with blame shifting and requests for policy changes that would amount to billions of dollars in handouts, right? Because they've been living off of us forever. The president characterized this arrangement as freeloading by other nations. Moving forward, he said, the only thing I will accept from drug manufacturers is a commitment that provides American families immediate relief from the vastly inflated drug prices and the end of the free ride of American innovation by European and other developing nations. The reason this is happening is because if you're England and you have socialized medicine, you buy all your medicine from one source, right? The government buys all the medicine. So they tell the drug manufacturers, this is what we'll pay. What do the drug companies do? They shift it to us, where we don't have such a thing, right? Trump is saying, oh no, Europe, the rest of the world, you're going to start paying. We're not. That's MAGA. That's Trump working for you folks. Who else would do that? Nobody else would do that. Let's see here. Then we had this story, which is very bad news. We talked about some last week. CDC reports U.S. birth rate has dropped to a record low. The data for the Center of Disease Control and Prevention confirms provisional information the organization released in April. Numbers show that the U.S. fertility rate is at an all-time low, with 1.6 births per woman, down from 1.629 in 2023. In contrast, the Associated Press reported in 1960 the fertility rate was around 3.5 per woman. Okay, that brought the so basically there were like 3.6 million babies born, but the data also shows that women are having children later than ever before, and they're basically waiting to the ages of 35 to 39 because they can't afford it. And that's why we talked about you getting kids, recruiting people to get jobs in the trades so they can have a middle class income and afford to have children sooner. I'm begging you, that job one, every day you got to get up and say, how can I reach out to someone in my circle and convince them to go join the trades, go get educated in the trades? I've been talking to my school board. You've been talking to school board. I've been getting letters from you guys. I had a good friend and donor write to me and said, he talked to his nephew and said, I will pay for your education to get a trade. He made that step. That's a big incentive that shows that a relative cares. Some of you could do that. Keep working on it, because the bottom line is, if we don't reverse this trend of declining births, we're done. We're done as a species. Do you understand? We're not replicating ourselves. How much clearer does it get? We have the answer. The problem is we've told men that they can't be men. Toxic masculinity. We've taught women that they don't need men, right? We've said, oh, sex is for fun, not for reproduction. This study also said that, even while births continue to climb, abortions are going up. There were 3.6 million babies born, but there were 1 million babies aborted. And now you got a pill that does that. And now they're coming out with a pill for men, a birth control for men, which a lot of women have been saying, where's that been? Do we want to survive as a species or not? I would think you would want to. We have grandchildren. We have children and grandchildren. They are everything to Nan and I. This is what it's all about. That's why we spend our lives working so hard to give them a life that would be good to live and to bring joy into this world and creativity and answers and solutions. Children aren't a plague. They're not an illness. That's the left. Remember the poll, the Pew Research poll? We can't agree on things. The left thinks, because of the lie of climate change, that if you have babies, you're killing the planet. You're selfish. You should only have one child. Yeah, that's what the commies did. They're commies. That's not what the Bible says. That's not what God says. That's not what we believe. That's what other animals don't believe that. They reproduce to keep their species going. They are a gift. That aborted child could have been Einstein, could have been Elon Musk. That's the way we believe. We need to promote marriage and having children. To do that, you need to promote jobs. Okay? That's the point. That's why we do this thing. That's why we talk on this podcast about those things, because they're fundamentally important to all of us. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the courts, okay, and stuff like that. Trump is just crushing the woke colleges, okay? It's just absolutely terrific what's going on with that. Am I in the right place here? Yeah, okay. He's it's back to school season, and thanks to President Donald Trump, universities are back on the right track and ditching leftist dogma. Under the Trump administration, woke indoctrination doesn't fly. Columbia and Harvard, those ivory towers of elitism, got pummeled by Trump for their anti-Semitic and anti-American nonsense. Columbia and Harvard both recently gave up their fight against Trump and agreed to pay hundreds of millions of dollars to settlements against anti-Semitism and discrimination. DEI, discriminating against white people. And just this week, UCLA also agreed to settle a $6 million lawsuit. Campus activism and university DEI programs took a gut punch from our president, and the transgender nonsense is in retreat, as we've been reporting. And so, he's doing this because the courts basically said, yeah, you're allowed to do this. You're allowed to take away their funding because they broke Title IX laws, etc. So then we had this ruling from this court today. Appeals court allows Trump order that ends union protections for federalized workers. So what is this about? Well, you may remember that Biden entered into a collective bargaining agreement with this union that allowed them to stay home and not have to come to work and all that stuff right before Trump became president. Trump is not putting up with that. A federal appeals court on Friday allowed President Trump to move forward with an order instructing a broad swath of government agencies to end collective bargaining with federal unions. Not only should we not have federal collective bargaining, we shouldn't have federal unions. Federal unions are illegal. Every president has said that. We need to get rid of. There should be no one in a school district, in your city government. If you're a government worker, you shouldn't be able to unionize. Why? Because there's no competition. There's no other way to do it. You already have a monopoly position. Okay? So this court just said you don't have to collectively negotiate. That's awesome news. This is another thing that kind of ties into the woke colleges. U.S. judge rejects state's bid to block Trump diversity research funding cuts. A federal judge on Friday rejected a bid by 16 Democrat-led states to force U.S. President Donald Trump's administration to restore hundreds of millions of dollars of grants it canceled that support increasing diversity in science, technology, and engineering and math fields. We don't need diversity. We need excellence in science, technology, engineering, and math fields. We need meritocracy. That's what we need. Democrats state attorney generals had urged U.S. District Judge John Cronin in Manhattan to block the National Science Foundation from canceling funding awarded to universities designed to increase the participation of women, minorities, and people in those fields known collectively as STEM. The court just said he doesn't have to do it. He shouldn't have to do it. We shouldn't be funding anything remotely like that. And so we're winning, winning, winning. I'm going to just touch on, which I touched on earlier, the Cincinnati, riot, the beatdown of the white people that, the police chief of Cincinnati, the city council members just embarrassed themselves. Okay. The bottom line is this is a symptom of what the left has been trying to do to our country. And my problem is that the Republicans have allowed it to happen. I have spent, and many of you have spent time trying to get Republicans to run in cities. And the Republican Party always tells you, oh, it's not worth the effort and you can't win there and all that. That's bull. And quite frankly, I called it out here in Ohio as racist. We've had good candidates who could win in predominantly black cities. And remember, a lot of these cities aren't predominantly black anymore. They're Hispanic in the South and California, right? Why aren't we running in these cities? But what's happened is we've conceded these cities to communism. And so I want to just touch upon a couple things. So the one city council member said, oh, they were begging for that beatdown, right? Which is insane that anyone deserves to get beat down. But then another one said, though the only reason this is a big national story is because those victims were white. Doesn't that tell you a lot about her mentality and the city of Cincinnati's mentality? Because guess what? If those were blacks beating blacks, I'm just as outraged. If those are blacks beating blacks, or whites beating whites, or Hispanics beating Hispanics, and there's no racial component, I'm on the phone calling 911. Only one person called, and they played it down. Oh, there's a fight. It wasn't a fight. It was a mugging. They've charged 6 people. Let's see what kind of charges they get. But is this a hate crime? And I hate the idea of hate crimes. There's no such thing as a hate crime. If you murder somebody, it's murder. It's not because you hate them. Yeah, you have to hate them to murder somebody. I hate that term. It's bullcrap. But they use it against whites all the time. Harmeet Dillon and the DOJ, yeah, they're investigating. And Cincinnati's mayor and their city council and their police department and their DA, if they don't protect white people as much as black people, the one guy that was involved in the beating the black guy had done a similar thing and was out on $400 bail. $400 bail, right? So Harvey Dillon may charge him with federal crimes as well. Here's the bottom line, folks. Equal justice under the law. The bottom line is Barack Obama started it when he would do nothing about the black on black violence in Chicago during his term. Killing, maiming thousands of black people. None of our business, nothing to see here, because it didn't fit the narrative that America was white racist. What a sin. What a crime. We got to stop it. The flag stands for everybody. Equal justice under the law for all. For all. Justice is blind with the scale, right? That's what Cincinnati's about. That we don't have justice. We don't have law enforcement. And that's why you have what you saw there. And that's why all the elected officials there should be thrown out on their asses, because they don't care about those people. They don't care about the people that were beat, and they don't care about the people who were doing the beating. That's the real truth. That's the sad part that we got to fix in America. We got to care about our fellow citizens and do something. And that's why many of us were really excited about these things that the FBI and DOJ are doing. Because we've been screaming about grooming children, child porn, pedophile networks. We've been screaming about it. FBI and DOJ dismantled massive dark web child porn network. Department of Justice and Federal Bureau of Investigation has announced the conclusion of a sweeping investigation that dismantled 4 dark websites hosting child sexual abuse. Sexual abuse, not child porn, abusing children sexually materials. Dubbed Operation Grayskull, the effort has thus far resulted in 18 criminal convictions, with the offenders receiving significant federal sentences. Last week, one of the high-profile prosecutions resulted in Thomas Peter Katatempes, 52, of Eagan, Minnesota, being sentenced to 250 months in prison, lifetime supervised release, in order to pay $23,000 in restitution after pleading guilty to conspiracy to advertise and distribute child pornography. He joined one of the dark websites in 2022 and became a site moderator, actively distributing and advising others on sharing illegal content. FBI Director Kash Patel has described Operation Grayskull as one of the most significant strikes ever made against online child exploitation networks. He emphasized you cannot hide behind anonymity to harm children. Investigators revealed that the dismantled sites include some of the most egregious child exploitation platforms online, featuring sections dedicated to infants, toddlers, and violent content involving sadism and torture of children. The sites collectively attracted over 120,000 users and had at least 100,000 visits in a single day. We're a sick society. We are a sick society. 8 defendants were prosecuted and sentenced in the Southern District of Florida alone for running one of the largest of the targeted websites. Sentences range from 20 years to life in prison. Additional convictions in other federal districts included sentences for nearly 6 years to 18 years. 2 individuals died before they could be charged, and arrests were also made internationally, including in the United Kingdom, Netherlands, Italy, Germany, Estonia, Belgium, and South Africa. These offenders thought they could act without consequences, but they are wrong. Acting Attorney General Matthew R. Gialetti of the DOJ's Criminal Division said, "Hear, hear." Did you hear those stories under Obama? Did you hear anybody cracking down on pedophilia and stuff under Biden? They didn't care. They think it's okay. They want not just gay marriage, they want adults to be able to marry children. That's how sick they are, okay? That's why you fought so hard to elect Donald Trump and install, the people like Kash Patel and Dan Bongino to stop this stuff. This is something else that needs to be stopped. Congressional stock trading ban passes through committee as Hawley denies reports of White House pushback. The Honest Act would prohibit lawmakers, the president and vice president, from trading stocks while in office. The long-awaited stock trading ban passed through the Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee on Wednesday, with committee Democrats joining the bill's sponsor, Josh Hawley, to send the bill to the Senate floor. Republicans voted against it. They voted against it. Hawley originally introduced the Pelosi Act earlier this year, but what ultimately passed through the dizzying committee markup process on Monday was the Honest Act. Both pieces of legislation ban all members of Congress and their spouses from trading stocks while in office. Okay? The bottom line is Nancy Pelosi makes $174,000 a year as a congressman, and she and her husband are worth $431 million. There's even a fund tracker who posts every trade the Pelosi's make so that you can invest in them as well, because they're making it based on inside information. President Trump says that needs to be investigated. Yeah, they're criminals. And then somebody came out and said, honest to God, I should have grabbed that clip. I don't have it. Someone also came out and said, you know what? If you didn't allow for this insider trading that you and I are not allowed to do, we would go to prison if we did what Nancy Pelosi does routinely and all the rest of them. He said, if you didn't allow this, you won't be able to attract good people to Congress. Honest to God. Somebody out there look that up, search for that. I read that. That's a sitting member of Congress said that. How dare you? Good people? Insider trading? Are you coming to work in Congress to get wealthy? Is that the deal? Are you representing your district? You know what? We know the answer. You're coming to steal us blind. Nobody's representing you. Nobody's representing me. That's just a fact. Till Donald Trump came around, they were all playing the same game. Now maybe they won't be. We'll see. Good news. Also good news. I just thought we should do this. Many of you know that we were big supporters of Project 2025. Many of you went and were part of Project 2025. Okay, you actually signed up to be part of it. Well, the architect, the guy behind it, was named Paul Dans, and he got trashed by Trump and eventually got fired, even though he shouldn't have been. What he did was really good, really important. We have a podcast that I did with him on our website at wethepeopleconvention.org. And Paul Dans has announced that he's going to try to unseat Lindsey Graham. Paul Dans, a former Trump White House and Heritage Foundation staffer who oversaw the development of Project 2025, is set to announce he will challenge Senator Lindsey Graham in the 2026 South Carolina Republican primary. Dans will officially announce the primary challenge on Wednesday in Charleston, South Carolina, joining the Senate race, which includes Graham and former South Carolina Lieutenant Governor Andrea Brower. What we've done with Project 25 is really change the game in terms of closing the door on the progressive era, Dan said in a recent media interview, adding, if you look at what the choke point is, it's the United States Senate. That's the headwaters of the swamp. The former White House official and Heritage Foundation staffer emphasized that Graham has spent most of his career in Washington, D.C., being more representative of the political establishment than the voters of South Carolina. It's time to show him the door. I, Tom Zalestowski, and the We the People Convention formally endorse Paul Dans for Senate in South Carolina. And our members, and we have hundreds, if not thousands, of our members in South Carolina, I ask you to contact the Dans campaign and start doing the grassroots work to try to do this. Now, let's be totally clear. President Trump endorsed Lindsey Graham again, who we know is a total deep state creature. I suggested to you that President Trump did that because Lindsey Graham was going to stop the big, beautiful bill if Trump didn't give money to Ukraine and endorse him. I think that's what happened. It's going to take a lot of money. I hope that Paul Dans can get some of the donors to Heritage, some of their big donors to back him, because he's legit. This guy's no stooge. This guy knows politics. He certainly, Project 2025, folks, is why everything you're hearing in this podcast is happening. All the stuff that Russ Vaught is talking about, all the things they're doing of firing all these people who are undermining us and getting rid of the lying climate scientists and everything else. Paul Dans was part of that. He deserves your effort and your loyalty. So please contact the Dans campaign, and I'll probably issue a press release from the We the People Convention endorsing him. That was pretty exciting. Courageous. I hope it's not a suicide mission, but we'll see. Okay? We'll see what happens. Okay, so next story. let's see. This is a good story too. Trump calls for prosecution of Kamala Harris and Beyonce and Oprah. Okay, so this is pretty cool because I felt this all along. President Trump on Saturday called for prosecutions of former Vice President Kamala Harris and several high-profile celebrities because of what he characterized as illegal payments for political endorsements. In a post on Truth Social, Trump accused the Harris campaign of paying millions of dollars to celebrities for appearances that amounted to paid endorsements, which he argued violated campaign finance law. It does. It does. If you pay someone to come and endorse you, you have to disclose that to the public and on your federal campaign finance reports. They didn't. I'm looking at the large amount of money owned by the Democrats after the presidential election and the fact that they admit to paying, probably illegally, $11 million to singer Beyonce for an endorsement. She never sang, not one note, and left the stage to a booing and angry audience. $3 million for expenses to Oprah. $600,000 to very low-rated TV anchor Al Sharpton, and others to be named for doing absolutely nothing, Trump wrote. These ridiculous fees were incorrectly stated in the books and on the records. You are not allowed to pay for an endorsement. It's totally illegal to do so. Could you imagine what would have happened if politicians started paying for people to endorse them? All hell would break loose. They need to be charged. I don't think the statute of limitations is over. I agree with him. I think they need to be charged. It's just terrible. Okay? We had been talking last week. Let me see if I can find this cover for this story. Okay. Okay. And this was a big move by the GOP to hold the House. We talked last week about Texas and Ohio redistricting. And Texas came into session, and it looks like they're going to pick up 5 seats in Texas. I just heard this week, I talked to people in the know. In Ohio, we're going to redistrict, and Ohio should be able to pick up 2 more seats. That's 7 seats in a House of Representatives that is really close right now. So this is big news. But the bottom line is that Trump and these guys are planning, and I talked to you, maybe this tariff bonus is part of this, but they're planning to get ready for 2026. Not the big, beautiful bill is passed. It's all about 2026. So what's Trump doing? He's pushing redistricting. He's minimizing retirements. Again, one of the problems is it's a lot harder to elect a new person than an incumbent because they have all the name recognition and, they have all the money from lobbyists. He's spending big. The GOP continues to spend large amounts of money to protect its majority, although not quite as much as the Democrats. But it's clear that, they're doing better than they've done in the past. Take primary challengers off the table. By endorsing members for their House seats early, Trump is making it hard for other Republicans to challenge the incumbents. We're totally against that. We think that this is a huge mistake that Trump makes, that he will not endorse against a sitting Republican. How are we ever going to change the rhinos out? We're not. We're just simply not. And like I told you, Paul Dans, he's got a huge climb because Trump endorsed the rhino, Lindsey Graham. So they're not trying to help us in the grassroots. They're trying to hurt us. They're raising money like crazy. I'm sure you're getting hit up for that. They are pushing certain issues. They're basically going to attack the House Democrats on the fact that they say, if we win the House, we're going to impeach Trump. Nobody wants that. That's a winning strategy. It's good messaging. They're basically trying to use outside things like maybe giving a bonus in 2026. Oh, yeah, the tariff money is flowing in. Here's $1,200, things like that. But most of all, it's like I told you guys, performance. You pass the big, beautiful bill. You got to do these rescissions, and then you got to get the economy rolling, baby. You got to get the economy rolling. And if they do that, 2026 will take care of itself. But I just wanted you to know an update on that because that's really important. This was a great move. We've talked about this for a long, long time. This is about the USDA to move half out of DC Capital Region employees to hubs closer to farmers, ranchers across the U.S. When Trump took office the first time, he had the idea of moving the federal agencies out of DC because when you put them all together, that's when the corruption starts. It's too easy for them to say, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. By putting them all over the country, A, you bring them closer to we the people. B, you cut expenses. I'm going to talk about that in a second, big time. And C, you get people from those areas who sign up to work there, so you get a better blend of America thinking, right? So here it is happening. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins says she'll move roughly half of the employees working in Washington, D.C. region to regional offices closer to farmers, ranchers, and producers across the U.S. In the announcement Thursday, the USDA said agency workforce increased by 8% over the last 4 years, with salaries raised by 14.5%. Can you imagine that? Resulting in hiring of thousands of employees with no sustainable way to pay them. The agency also said the growth in spending occurred without any tangible increase in services. We're paying more for less. How's that? That's got to end, and it's going to end. And the USDA's footprint in the national capital region is underutilized and redundant, plagued by rampant overspending and decades of mismanagement and costly deferred maintenance. The department has 46,000 employees in the capital region. It's looking to keep no more than 2,000 in D.C. Moving the staff to 5 hub locations around the country will also decrease costs for the USDA, as the federal salary locality rate for D.C. area is nearly 34% higher than the other locations around the country. 34% higher. Is that savings for us? You bet. The hubs to which most of the staff will relocate will be Indianapolis, Salt Lake City, Fort Collins, Colorado, Kansas City, Missouri, and Raleigh, North Carolina. USDA said that it will also vacate other facilities, including the Beltsville Agricultural Research Center in suburban Maryland, and is considering whether to continue to use several other facilities. This is what we want across the board. We want this for every agency that we can possibly get it for. It's just so important. This is a throwback story, something that's from our youth, and many of you guys are going to chuckle and laugh about this, but Trump revives presidential fitness test. How's that? President Donald Trump signed an executive order reinstating the National Fitness Assessment, which was sunset during the Obama administration. He signed an executive order on Thursday afternoon reinstating the National Fitness Assessment implemented in public schools from 1956 to 2013. The role of administering the test will fall to Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's been vocal in his concerns about childhood obesity and Make America Healthy Again agenda report in February, attributed the issue in part to sedentary lifestyles. Yeah, they're playing on their games. They're not outside playing baseball. They're not outside doing stuff. The White House told NBC News that Trump aims to address America's declining health and physical fitness, including crisis levels of obesity, chronic disease, inactivity, and poor nutrition. So they didn't say how many push-ups or sit-ups you need to do. I'm anxious to see that. I don't know if I could pass this test, but I'd sure give it a try. But I think it's great. I think it's like a national scale. And I know it's another way to get boys to compete with each other, right? I can do it. You can't. Get you to make the effort. It'd be fun. I love it. It's awesome. Congratulations, President Trump. This was awesome. North Carolina, all the folks in North Carolina, man, you got to be so happy that your legislator did that. North Carolina lawmakers override Dem governor's veto of bill preventing sexual exploitation of women and minors. The North Carolina state legislator overrode the Democratic governor's veto of HB 805, which seeks to prevent the sexual exploitation of women and minors on Tuesday, passing it into law. Both the State House and State Senate voted to override Governor Josh Stein's veto of the Republican-sponsored legislation, which would officially recognize two sexes in all administrative rules, regulations, or public policies adopted by the state, prohibit state funding from growing towards trans procedures, and require schools to adopt policies enabling parents and students to opt out of curriculum on religious grounds, according to North Carolina Family Policy Council. Folks, that's awesome. All of our members in North Carolina, we got more there than South Carolina, I think. Do this. Please pick up the phone, go online, and send a note or call your local House and Senate candidate and say thank you. Thank you. We call them a bitch all the time, but you can call them and say, yay, way to go. This is a big win. The governor vetoed this. Your kids are now safe. Wow. Hallelujah. It's awesome. And then, oh, this was terrific. I think I put it on X. I said, this is my hero of the week. Okay. Virginia dad suspended from pool after calling out boy and girls races. Now, I've told you guys at the beginning of trans, when Will, quote, Leah Thomas swam, I told you, I coached for years. I coached women's sports in college. And I told you, there is no way if I was a swimming coach that any man would get in the pool with my girls. Okay? And if I was a father or a mother of a woman or a girl in high school or college sports, there is no way the race would go on with a man or a boy racing against my daughter. Okay? And I told you, when they showed up for the swim meet in the first place, Will Leah Thomas swam was at Akron University, right here where I live, in Akron, Ohio. I said, when they showed up, if I was a swim coach, there would be no water in the pool because we would have had a malfunction. Yeah. How come that didn't happen? Well, guess what? It just did. Look at this guy. Look at his smiling face. This guy is my man. He is my man. A Virginia father was suspended from a local pool after alerting officials to a boy competing against girls in several swimming races. Woodley Pool, located in Fairfax County, claims they are suspending Luis Enriquez Fernandez, right? He's Hispanic. He's Hispanic and he did this. A father of 6, for allegedly using repeated vulgarity toward a parent and a member of an opposing team and acting in a threatening, abusive manner. However, speaking exclusively to the Daily Wire, Fernandez says the account is not true. The father of 6, who had been a paying member of the club since 2019, suspected the Woodley Pool Board is punishing him for speaking out about the male competing against females while using a flimsy pretext, which Fernandez vehemently disputes as cover. Fernandez insists he did not use vulgarity or abusive language towards anyone, and around 20 pool members are supporting him. They're getting their asses sued big time. Some have already reached out to the board to complain, but Woodley is standing by a suspension. Woodley is standing by a suspension of Fernandez. Fernandez is standing by what he did that day as well. Speaking to the Daily Wire in a phone interview, he said he was a swim marshal for an under 10 meet when he noticed that what appeared to be a boy competing in a girls' race. Suspecting this was a rule violation or at least unfair, Fernandez alerted other officials. Swim marshals generally act to keep safety in order during a meet. When no one acted, Fernandez took it upon himself to rectify the situation. I think to myself, everything that's just happening now, nobody's going to know about it. Fernandez told the Daily Wire, nobody's going to realize that they've been racing against a boy. Nobody's going to realize that the winner of all these races is this boy. It's just all going to be forgotten. Nobody's going to realize anything here. Noticing that the race results had been posted on a board that the male swimmer had won 2 races, Fernandez decided to go get a marker and write the word boy on the boy's name. Female athletes and other advocates that are fighting to protect children applauded his effort, but they suspended him from the pool. Good job, young man. And what a good father. What a good father Luis Enrique Fernandez is. God bless you guys. And anybody who lives there in, what city is that? In Fairfax County. Oh yeah, Fairfax County, where all the lefties who work in government live. Make sure you call the pool and say they need to apologize and they need to follow President Trump's guidelines. Boys can't compete against girls. That's just the law. Now, let's just say that's Title IX. That's the law. Okay? Call him up. Back this guy. He deserves it. What a hero. Love this guy. And so I want to close with this AI story. And I know I've been beating you guys to death with AI, but it's important. It's important. And I've tried to share things with you that make a difference. So I want to share 2 things with you. I mentioned this last week, but my friend Larry Ward who is actually the CEO of the company that runs our website. He said Trump scores major victory against woke AI. And I said to you last week that Trump signed an executive order that did 3 things with AI, and one of them was to help build data centers and things like that. But the third thing says that Trump said you can't do business with the government if you have woke AI. It's got to be historically correct. It can't have these problems. So listen to what Larry writes. Like a war general who thinks 7 steps ahead, President Donald Trump just executed the most brilliant strategic maneuver in the battle against bias and artificial intelligence. What looked like separate policy decisions was a perfectly orchestrated trap that has left Silicon Valley's biggest AI companies with no choice but to comply with his vision for neutral, truthful AI systems. The trap was sprung in 2 calculated moves that demonstrate why Trump remains the most formidable strategic mind in American politics. Phase 1, the lure. On July 14th, the Department of Defense announced contracts worth up to $200 million each for the 4 major AI companies: OpenAI, ChatGPT, Anthropic, Google, and X, okay, with Elon Musk. The Pentagon's Chief Digital and Artificial Intelligence Office framed these words as essential for accelerating the adoption of advanced AI capabilities to address critical national security challenges. The companies would develop agentic AI workflows across multiple mission areas, from warfighting to intelligence analysis. At that time, it seemed like the standard government contract. The Defense Department embracing commercial AI solutions to maintain strategic advantage over adversaries like China. The AI companies celebrated landing lucrative federal contracts totaling up to $800 million. It's almost $1 trillion. That's real money, even for billionaires. But Trump was setting the trap. The trap springs. 9 days later, on July 23rd, President Trump signs his executive order preventing woke AI in the federal government. The order mandates that federal agencies can only produce AI systems that adhere to strict, unbiased AI principles, specifically requiring truth-seeking and ideological neutrality. The executive order explicitly bans AI systems that engage in the suppression or distortion of factual information about race or sex, the manipulation of racial or sexual representation in model outputs, the incorporation of concepts like critical race theory, transgenderism, unconscious bias, intersectionality, and systemic racism and discrimination based on race or sex. Suddenly, every AI company that just signed massive DoD contracts faces stark choice: comply with Trump's neutrality requirements or lose federal business. This wasn't luck or coincidence. It was a masterful strategic planning that demonstrates Trump's superior understanding of leverage and timing. First, he created a dependency by awarding the substantial contracts, and then he created, the requirement that they had to fulfill the same neutral AI that we all want. I think that's a great explanation. Thank you, Larry Ward, for that. President Trump, thank you. We need government not to do what you've seen throughout this program, which is have scientists who promote an agenda of climate change when they don't have the evidence, who have Labor Department people who make projections, do reports about the labor statistics that are lies. I said we seek truth in this podcast. The biggest seeker of truth we've got to have is AI. If AI is ideological and is used to manipulate, we're done. We're done. I mean it. And I'm going to prove that next. Okay? So how do you stop that? Well, you and I can say, I searched for George Washington and they gave me a picture of a black person dressed as George Washington. That happened. That's not happening now. They fixed it. I asked them about January 6th and they say it was an insurrection. That happens. That can't happen. We're going to prove the history is going to change, right? Russia. The AIs can't say, based on the documents that are out now, It's real clear. Hillary Clinton paid for it. She approved the plan. She paid for the Steele dossier. They got the FBI involved. Comey and those guys, execute a plan at Barack Obama's insistence with Clapper and Brennan, those guys, to frame President Trump, to destroy his presidency. Those are historic facts now. We've got the documents. AI has to report that. Why would they? Why would they? If they're all lefties, if the guys doing the coding are all lefties, why would, if they're using the internet as their large language model data, why would they? You know why they would? Because they got $1 trillion worth of contracts at stake with the federal government and more to come. And that's the only way. That's the only way we're going to be protected. That is no small story. That's a big story. Okay, I'll link to this story. You can share it. You should read the rest of it. He goes into much more depth. Thanks, Larry Ward, for writing that. But you want to protect and defend your individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity? Donald J. Trump just did that. Okay, just did that. And so I'm going to close with this. I sent out an email to some of you this week, but I posted this video when I didn't want to. I was afraid. There's this video, Artificial Superintelligence, The Point of No Return with Eric Schmidt. This is from a podcast that I watch a lot called Moonshots by a guy named Peter Diamandis. And when I sent out my email, I said, I hadn't sent this video or posted because I didn't think you could handle it. This video is serious stuff. Eric Schmidt, you want to talk about people in the know, particularly about technology, but also politics. Eric Schmidt, who helped found Google, knows everybody, was best friends with Henry Kissinger. He walks you through, okay? He walks you through what's coming with AI, good, bad, and ugly. But the thing he also talks about is how does this war between China and the US play out? And he comes up with a concept that on its face makes some sense, kind of using the metaphor of the nuclear race, mutually assured destruction. He's saying that the AI systems will hopefully develop the ability to destroy each other if they go too far. Okay, and he talks this through. When I watched this video the first time, I literally shut it off and said, based on what I had just heard, if I was Donald Trump, I would attack China with nuclear weapons today. Because I don't think what he's proposing, Eric Schmidt is proposing, has much chance of playing out. And if it doesn't play out that way, oh my, what a horrific world we'll live in. I decided to post this because I felt I owe it to you. I think you need to know the facts. You need to have this kind of analysis of the real dangers that lie ahead for our nation and for freedom itself. So that video is at wethepeopleconvention.org in the video section. And you need to watch it, even if it hurts, even if it scares you. You got to watch it. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be all bad, and he makes a case about a lot of good. And I'll probably share a video with you this week about healthcare and how good it's going to really be. But there are serious questions, and I've never seen anyone really walk you through the steps of how this is going to all play out and how it's going to affect you individually and your family and your community and our nation and the world. I think you deserve to see that. So please watch it. Okay. I know that's not the happiest note to end the podcast on. There were a lot of good stories in here and, a lot of things you need to take action on. Most of all, I needed to tell people about this podcast. We need to keep growing our viewership. Why? Because we got to win the narrative. and because we need to get people to act with us to help move the needle, right? We got to tell our congressmen we don't want a payback from tariffs. We want to pay down the debt. I need you to send story ideas, comments, complaints, whatever, to me at info@wethepeopleconvention.org. info@wethepeopleconvention.org. We read your links. If you send a video, don't just send a link. Tell me what it's about so I can decide if it's worth our time or if I've already seen something similar. This is your podcast. I just deliver it. We're here to share truth. If I'm wrong, you damn well better call me out. Right up. If I said something today that's not true, I need to know that and I need to apologize for that. But send the receipts. Don't just send me your opinions. Okay? But I'm sure glad you decided to take your time to join us, to get informed, and then to share this information through our website. The stories on our website each have, a share button on that page. You can share it. In our podcast page, there's links to every story you can share. Our chapters player. Follow us on X at TomZWTPC and share what I post. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on TikTok. Follow us on MeWe. Follow us on Gab. Okay? We're a network. We've got to make sure when the major networks, quote unquote, which aren't so major anymore. I told you the story about the fact that, for the first time ever in June, more people streamed video than watched all the networks combined. First time in history. They're disappearing. But when they won't tell the Russia story because they're complicit, you do. You need to take that Jonathan Turley video that I put up there at the beginning of the show and share it with people. They need to understand this ain't a theory. These are facts. And this isn't what they thought it was. This wasn't a hoax. This was a crime. Now, whether those people ever go to prison for that, I'm praying they do. I don't know if they will. I'm praying that they do. I'm praying for Pam Bondi. I'm praying for Cash Patel, Dan Bongino, Judge Janine, all the rest of them. Okay? I hope you're praying for them as well. I thank those of you who pray for Nan and I. I get notes from you all the time. Believe me, it helps us a lot. I pray for you guys. I pray for our nation. I pray for the president. This is a time to pray really hard because we are in the most dynamic times in human history. We are privileged to be alive now, but we also have responsibility. We have to do our part. We're not spectators, we're participants. We're players in the game. Our job is to protect and defend individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. Use the resources that the We the People Convention give you to do that. And thanks to all of you who donate so that we can do the things that we do. I hope we will see you again next week, God willing. I hope you're in good health. If you're not, I hope you're getting better. But thank you for taking your time today. You've been listening to the We the People Convention News and Opinion Podcast, and my name is Tom Zawistowski. May God bless you, because he's already blessed America. Have a great week.
Can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight